trust part of it, because in fact, you can actually run a 2-3 hour session on trust itself. But this is prior to it. It's more in terms of building foundation towards trust. I'll just share. Shall I start, Terly?
Please do. Please do. We're delighted to hear
Lovely,
from you. Yes.
lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay. Depending on the time, there are 4 concepts I will talk about it. It's all about contracts. See, many times when we hear the word contract, we always associate with legalities and in terms of court or cases. This is about day-to-day interactions and how we can have contracts in our working life, in our personal lives, in our business life. In fact, it can be with our own selves, although I'm not talking about it. So there are several concepts in contracting. I'm just sharing about few of them. I've kept a 10-minute timeline, Terly, so it's about a minute. So I'll look at how much I can share in 9 minutes. Contract is an explicit bilateral commitment to a defined course of action, to well-defined course of action. So this was stated by Eric Berne way back in 1966. Many of my concepts will come from transaction analysis and how it's applied not only for counseling purposes, but also in our business environment. There are 4 requirements in a contract when you look at it. So many times when we get into a contract, we look in terms of jumping into the discussion of what I can do, what you can do. There is actually a structure available. Most importantly, it would help if the requirement is expressed by the client. Although we may say, this is what I have to offer, this is what I do, this is what I can do, this is what is my commitment. Somewhere the request has to come based on or our offers. What is that he wants? So based on what he has to or she has to ask for it, then a proposal is given by the consultant or a businessman or a coach or a trainer. Thereafter, if it is accepted, then it becomes a mutual consent. Otherwise, it becomes more in terms of drilling down on the throat of it, and many of the contracts actually break off after a while. Now, every contract has to have a consideration. Most of the contracts in business are monetary. Sometimes it may be non-monetary also in terms of kind. In some extreme cases, it can also happen. Some of the organization, in lieu of cash, they also say, can we have a stake in your company? All that also is equivalent to a monetary transaction. So as long as there is a consideration appropriate to the service being rendered. Also in a contract, important is that the people are entering the contract, do they have the competency? Both in terms of the seller and the buyer, or the service provider and the service receiver. Many a times we come up and commit, but we are not able to back it up with the competency. So it's more important that we demonstrate the competency of what we have to offer, and also estimate the competency of the other through questioning skills in terms of, is he the right person to sign? Is he the right person to commit? Is he the right person to implement also? Last but not the least is in terms of, is it lawful? 90 to 95% of the businesses we do, it is lawful, but sometimes we may have a doubt, will it violate some of the regulations? It's always good to check and be above board rather than wonder whether it is lawful later on. So this is one part of it. These are 4 requirements which are required to be able to enter into a contract. Now let's look at another aspect of it. Each contract in our process of our discussions, actually, wherever possible, I'll use Terry's example itself here to explain these 3 components or types of contracting. Now, when Terry says we will have the sessions of V-Team on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, so it's administrative. So in terms of timing, in terms of where, location, who will be coming. Those are all very administrative contracting, it's called. Second is the professional contracting, which is in a way an important aspect of it. Professional contracting is all about objectives. So what is the objective for which you are working together? What is the purpose of coming together? So if it's a training, so what training am I equipping the other person? If it's coaching, so what coaching are we going to discuss about? If it's a business, what service is it being discussed to offer to the client? So that's the professional part of it. So in that, so where is it going to be held, or how are we going to meet? How frequently are we going to meet? When are we going to discuss? All that would come into the administrative part of it. This is actually structuring aspect of it. Administrative and professional in some form we will do that. A key component of it is the psychological part of it, which Divakar also made a reference in terms of the mental well-being. Okay, this is not viewed as in terms of well-being, but this is to touch upon a sensitive chord in terms of dealing with whether it's a confidentiality aspect of it, where a lot of information gets shared. We believe that the other person wouldn't go out and share. Can we ensure that the other person is told, or I make a commitment saying that whatever is discussed will remain within the four walls of a discussion? That's one part of the psychological part of it. Second part of it, being sensitive to that particular person. Sometimes we feel that the person wants to share, the person is uncomfortable, so make him to express, make him to communicate, because those are very psychological aspects of it in contracting, to build the relationship. Because many times when we're doing the contracting, we emphasize where the office meeting should be, who is going to be there, when is the tea is going to be served, or what is going to be discussed. But somewhere we miss out the psychological aspects of it, a sensitive aspect of it, which is extremely important. Although this originated from a counseling and a therapy perspective, it's important in every meeting actually. Psychological aspect of it can be expanded much beyond what I said, but I just touched upon an area so that it will helpful to understand. Because many a times there are people who want to share, are very uncomfortable to share, so you make them to feel comfortable by asking some light questions or easier questions to make them feel comfortable. Those come under the psychological part of it. Technically I may not have to do that, but how else do I rope in a meeting or in a training program or in a coaching discussion to make the person feel comfortable to share, to express, to communicate? So we looked at the requirements part of it. We looked at the types part of it. That's still about 2.5 minutes. So I'll see if I can share a little more on another type of contracting. In many cases, there are more than two people in a contract. We realize that in many setups, there is a third party. There are many more parties also. That's why it's called a multi-party contracting. But let's talk about just three aspects of it. If it's like, for example, I may meet up with the HR, or I may meet up with the CEO, I may meet up one of the CXOs and do the deal. But actual interaction or the delivery or would happen with another group of people. Here I'm calling it as participants. Now there are three corners to the contract. So one part of the contract is what I'm having with the HR head or the CXOs. Now other contract I'm having with the participants. Now why am I bringing this up? Many a times the needs or the objectives or the broad framework is discussed with the organization person, uh, in this case a CXO. However, when he say or she says, go and meet my people and do the delivery in terms of service or a business or whatever training. Now, at that time, one, it's important to keep the objectives at the backdrop and discuss the expectations with these group of participants and align their expectations with that particular objectives that I already discussed with them. Now, we also must be sensitive that the organization has had, in a year organization, the CXO also would have had a contract with his group saying that so-and-so is going to come, this is what you're going there for. So there is a contract there. So am I aware that there are three corners to the contract? I am having that contract with the greater power or the boss or the head. Yeah, I'm also having a contract, but there is also a contract between the other two members also. If I'm able to bring about an alignment, if I may use that word, so by understanding the needs and objectives of the organization and taking it with the participants, because participants or the group may come with their own expectations. So if I'm going to fulfill that, I may not be fulfill the organization's expectation. If I'm going to drill down to the participant, this is what I've come here, if you jolly well listen, which means that I may alienate the participants in my association, and I may have a bigger divide with them, and eventually I may not be able to sustain this relationship or even continue in this particular relationship. So if it was maintained very well, it would lead to a psychological distance whereby I'm able to maintain equal distance with all the parties. Especially it will be even more challenging if there are more than three parties. I'm just keeping the three parties here. So if it is not well maintained, then it will lead to issues, challenges, and eventually breakup of the relationship. So requirements of the contract, types of the contract, and three corners of the contract. There are many more, but I just thought I will touch this upon and introduce to the concept of contracting, which is way much more than what we normally think about, which is law-based and hugely documented. And many of these contracting may be in writing, may not be in writing also. So we must be aware about this and deal with it accordingly. Thank you very much for the opportunity here.
Thank you so much for presenting to us. We truly, truly appreciate it and appreciate your education, your experience, and
thank you.